Hey there, I'm Alan Furstenberg.
And I'm Mark Tucker. Welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two voice devs. Wow, Mark, it's our last episode of 2023. Can you believe it?
The year is coming swiftly to a close. Yes, I do believe it. I'm excited. Wow, what a year.
What a year indeed. It's kind of funny. Last year when we did our looking forward to 2023 episode, it we were coming off of a very depressing year. It felt like a lot of things were really changing. Didn't feel like it was for the better. But we kind of our motto then was we were just going to keep swimming. We were just going to keep going.
Yeah.
We were going to see what the year brought, and I don't think we were ready for what the year was going to
Oh
bring. Do
yeah,
you?
we kind of had some inclination of something, and then yeah, we'll get into it. But yeah, it was just crazy. But do you want to talk a little bit about what we had talked about and kind of what
Yeah,
we
sure.
we
So I mean,
thought was going to happen, or
I feel like the first thing that we really kind of talked about was how Amazon really looked like they were ready to kind of leap forward. You
Mhm.
know, there was some slowdowns, there were layoffs, but one of us said at the time the reports of our death have been greatly exaggerated. And well, I don't know. I don't feel like anything's changed. What does it look like from your perspective?
Well, so this last year, a number of different things happened at Amazon, and in some ways they've just kind of chugged forward, making some improvements, but there also have been, more layoffs this last year. So it's been kind of a challenging year. Um, some of the things that we had talked about were, what's available for monetization with Alexa. How's that going to change? We talked some about widgets, and we kind of had a little inclination of what's going on with kind of large language models, but not didn't really know how that was going to impact Alexa at all. But I've been involved in some things this last year, so like on the monetization side of things, I was involved in a beta of advertisements on the Echo Show. So this would allow you to take a skill that you've already got published, design some visuals for it, and it will show up on the kind of on the home screen as it's
Mhm.
flashing through on the Echo Show. If you tap on that, then you're able to go right into the skill, and that's just another opportunity to get your skill in front of lots and lots of eyes. So as I'm able to talk more about how that beta went of that new monetization approach, there are some good and some things that kind of were surprising. So hopefully
But
we can talk more about that in the future. But that was something that happened that they had talked about and that they were able to release.
well, was it
At least in a
released or
beta.
was it?
It's a beta,
It's a bit okay.
a closed beta. But they were at least able to get a number of different skills on the device. I know it's kind of hard because it is a beta, but people were seeing it and people were clicking and tapping
Okay, so
on
that's
the ads and getting to skills. So it's not available to everybody, but it was released to out in production, or at least a limited release.
okay. So it started rolling out. Widgets started rolling out.
Yeah, so officially I could start talking about widgets and all the work that I had done with widgets. I had done some work actually, coming into December. I was wanting to make sure that my Christmas countdown widget was available, but then it didn't show up in this widgets gallery anymore, which is like the widget store. And they've made changes recently to the widget gallery now. Instead of just one massive list of, I think at the time, 30 or 40
30 or so, yeah.
widgets. Now they've got widgets broken off into different categories. Um, and so you can access widgets there, but because I had built with the kind of the beta pre-release APIs and stuff for widgets, then my widgets weren't even showing up in the gallery anymore. And so I had to go and fix and kind of update and learn, figure out what the migration was. So part of the fun of being in a pre-release is getting out there. Some of the not so fun is like when you actually finally do. Um, there's sometimes breaking changes,
Yep.
sometimes other changes that you have to do. And something that's just recently I noticed on my older Echo Show 5 is that you can access widgets on there. It's kind of a
Oh,
different experience. Um, because I've got an Echo Show 15, which always shows a certain amount of widgets. I've got kind of a smaller Echo Show 10 that you can swipe out from one side and see the widgets and access them there. And on the Echo Show 5, you get a limited number of widgets that are enabled. You get little buttons in the top right that show icons for each of the widget categories. It's kind of a weird implementation. And then if you tap that button, then actually the whole screen, there's an overlay which has like your little widget in the middle, and you can interact with that one widget that's related to that button. And then
interesting,
like
but
that. It's not my favorite implementation. I think there's some different things that you could do with that, but I don't know, just so changes have been happening with widgets all in this last year. And we, kind of thought there was going to be some things happening and there were. So those were, I guess,
oh, but there were some
monetization
things
and
that didn't happen as well.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there was, Alexa Live talked about Alexa on mobile devices and how that was going to be a big thing.
Yeah, haven't
I
seen
don't think
much
I saw
about that.
anything.
Yeah.
We didn't have an Alexa Live this year. It was kind of rolled into the hardware event a little bit.
There was, yeah. So there was some stuff to show. Some stuff they started talking about Alexa LLMs and
We'll get to
bringing
that.
your own,
We'll
yeah,
get to
bringing your
that.
own LLM and stuff. So there were some things that were announced about that.
And
Um,
you also your blue sky prediction about Alexa was that we were going to see more talk about smart properties.
yeah, there's been some. I've seen some more ads and some things on social media, um, talking about. I think kind of the whole. There's different flavors of Alexa for properties. I think they've kind of branded some certain series of features differently, like in a hospital room, in an assisted care home, at your rental property. So I think those things are happening and they are making some slow progress on that.
Okay, so that was and as we said, the the interesting bit from Alexa at their not Alexa Live event was they, like the rest of the world, are focusing more on LLMs.
Yep.
Um, but so there was some talk about it, but nothing concrete has come out yet, right?
Yeah, so I was involved with well, there was some general documentation kind of talking about at a high level, these are the types of things that we're looking into with Alexa LLMs, and there was some stuff that I was able to be on preview for.
Oh,
But definitely can't talk about that yet.
am I going to have to cut this out of the clip?
Nope, nope,
Okay,
nope. I
okay.
think that the fact that they've announced it and allowed people to sign up for preview access. I'm not saying anything that's not
Not public. Okay,
that's not
very
public
good.
knowledge yet. So but we'll have to keep an eye out next year for what happens with that.
Okay. So on the Google side, the big event that we knew was going to happen, that did happen, was they shut down conversational actions. I know. I don't know what else I can say at this point about them, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it was a mistake. Still think it's a mistake, but they did it, and there was only so much that can happen. I mean, and for me at this point, I have literally a few days left to be in a Google Assistant GDE. That title goes away at the end of the year.
uh,
So that kind of tells you where they're thinking about third-party development for the Google Assistant. On the other hand, we were hoping that app actions would get some love and get some mention at I/O, and they didn't. It was lots of silence,
yeah,
which kind of had everybody speculating, well, what's happening? And again, like everyone else, there were some hints about LLMs with the assistant, but they
Yeah,
were very vague, and they're not third party aimed at all.
yeah,
Or let me rephrase that. They're not talking about them in terms of third parties and and LLMs with the assistant. So I don't know what's going to happen there. And then my blue sky guess, which I admitted was a long shot, was predicting that we were going to see developers get access to Fuchsia, which was going to be on all the smart devices,
yeah.
because that was going to be the way that you'd be able to develop for them. And that never happened. I didn't really think it was going to happen, but it never happened. And I suspect with the LLM craze, that's not a surprise.
We keep walking around this thing called LLMs here.
Yeah, I it's kind of funny. We last year, despite GPT-3 being out for a bit already, we kind of mentioned it mostly in passing.
Yeah, we do like, something to keep your eye out on.
Yeah.
Maybe something will happen.
But I would point out that one of the things that we did say is, hopefully this notion that we had been talking about for years about context, about user context, about, the big picture understanding. Maybe this time we'd see more of that. And I don't think we've seen more of that.
No.
Yeah, no. So that was a missed opportunity. At least so far, it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
So yeah, LLMs, more LLMs. That really was the subject last year. Not exclusively, let's be fair. But really that was the kind of theme of 2023.
Yeah, it kind of started with, I don't know, seemed like just kind of hearing about, or people, doing different things. It was all about prompt engineering and chat GPT and how do you exercise your prompts? And then it was like, these APIs are available. And they're like, here's OpenAI with the API. And then somebody else is like, well, how about this model and this other model and this other model? And it was pretty much like Google came out with models. Amazon came out with some sort of a strategy where at least they could host lots of different types of models and did a financial investment. Microsoft did a huge financial investment and have things available, huge partnership with OpenAI.
And
Um,
Apple did nothing.
I just recently saw that a paper, a scientific paper put out by them that talked about running LLMs on devices and using DRAM and caching, and so at least their contribution right now, I think, is going to be more on the how can we get these large language models to not just run in the cloud but also run on devices.
which seems to me like a direct stab at Google's announcements that they will be having LLMs running on Pixel devices soon.
Yeah, soon.
Well, it's been announced. There's a beta sign up list.
Yeah, no, that's how they
So,
start.
um, but I mean, the big news from Apple this year was, and we speculated about this, was Apple Vision.
Yeah.
And what exactly was it going to be? Was it going to have a voice component? And the answer was no, it wasn't. I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
haven't
cool
seen
looking.
much. Yeah, I haven't seen much or heard much in the news about it since its initial kind of announcement.
No, not much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's due out sometime next year, but okay,
Yeah.
yay.
So with all the things that are happening and like all the big players, there's also a lot of additional players that aren't, the big Microsoft, Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon, that are also working on large language models. And there's a whole group of open source LLMs that are available.
Yep, there
Um,
are.
so
And and we did talk about this several times. I've had conversations about this on the show with Noble Ackerson. I've had conversations with Roger Kibbe. I think the notion of these open source, or at least these, they're not open source, they're more publicly available models,
Yes.
is really interesting. But I keep going back to the notion of, well, that's great. How do I get started? You know, can I just run a command line and it's running and I now have an API?
It
And
is
the answer
not.
is not yet.
Yeah, there's still a lot, you know, if you're going to be working on these models, chances are you're going to need to dive into the realm of Python. If that's not a language that you've known, you'll have to pick that up. There's, you know, there's a lot of different things. Communities such as Hugging Face has lots of different models and data and you know, papers and things, but it's still takes significant work to take a model, put it behind an API, host it somewhere,
Right.
and be able to get responses back from it.
And I think that's kind of the beauty of what OpenAI introduced to us, is this notion of large language model on demand, or large language model as a service.
Yeah.
And you know, to some degree we're seeing that with Bedrock, to some degree we're seeing that with Google's Vertex AI, and I expect Google's going to be improving that. We haven't seen that so much with Microsoft, but I expect they'll start doing it as well. And I think, you know, so far it's been a huge barrier to entry. I think that that barrier to entry will be lower, but that's getting into predictions, and we're not predicting
We're
yet.
not that, we're not, yeah.
But yeah, I think the notion of open models, the notion of how hosting your own model or a local model, is really just started gaining traction.
Yeah.
And that's exciting to see.
So something else we've seen, we've talked a number of different times about Voiceflow and their tools. Some of the things that they've done this last year has really been a pivot towards LLMs. And even just recently, the conversation about bringing your own LLM, but using their tooling. So some of the things that were built in, easy deployed to things like Alexa, have changed, and that's not the primary focus. And the primary focus is going to be more on tooling and solving different problems using LLMs and assistants, whether it be a chatbot or a voice assistant. But that's been a big pivot for them.
It's been a big, you know, and I think Voiceflow really are heralding a big change. You know, one of the concepts that's been talked about a lot over the past year, that almost has got, you know, not really talked about before then, is retrieval augmented generation. I mean,
Yep.
even we were having this conversation before I knew it had a name. We were talking
Yes.
about it.
Yeah.
And Voiceflow, I think, really has embraced this notion of how to do retrieval augmented generation. You know, sometimes you want to build things with intent. Sometimes you know exactly what the user is going to say. Sometimes you don't. So you'll want to use generative AI, not so much to give a response, but to help you understand what the user is trying to do or ask. Help you understand
Yeah.
what information you need to find, and then use it again to send a response back. And I think Voiceflow is really out in front of everybody else almost.
Yeah. They
Doing that.
were really pushing. It was almost like, you know, as things were like rapidly happening with LLMs, Voiceflow was like, here's a new feature, here's another feature for LLMs, here's something else, here's an example, here's a video, here's, you know, they were just really
They've been really on top
pace.
of it.
Yeah.
Agreed. And making it clear to the world how to do these things, you know, that these things were relatively easy to do. And again, it's that whole notion of democratizing access to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly powerful. And the kind of the flip side of that is seeing what Dialogflow did with Google. They kind of buried Dialogflow under a brand new product offering called Search and Conversation, where again, it's a retrieval augmented system where you load a bunch of information in and you can have a conversation with it. And that's done through Dialogflow. But then you can extend it. You know, you can add the intents the same way that you always have, or you can add generative AI components where they make sense. And I think Dialogflow is kind of the first place that we've really seen companies say, we have an existing product. Let's see how we extend that with generative AI. You see Adobe doing the same sorts of things. You see, a few other companies, but I think really that's a trend that's just started, is companies really understanding where AI fits in and doing something with it. So that's been a trend we saw this year that I don't think we really expected it to take off that big.
Yeah, everybody was talking about AI, and in most cases, when they were talking about AI, it was some form of LLM that they were talking about.
So I don't know. It's been a year.
Yeah.
Glad it's over. I don't know, curious what other folks think. What were the high points of the past year for you? We'd like to know. You can reach out to us on social media, the comments below, and maybe we'll be looking forward a little bit more next time on Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Thanks, Alan.
Take care, Mark. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.